Welcome to the SADF podcast, the podcast where we unpack the forces reshaping the region's political and strategic landscape. I am your host, Taposh Kanti Ball, and today's episode is titled South Asia in Flux, Bangladesh's Islamist Shift and India's Strategic Calculus. Before we dive in, here's a question for you, our listeners. How do you think ideology influences foreign policy in South Asia today? We would love to hear your thoughts. Share them with us on the social media using the hashtag South Asia Influx or drop us a comment on our YouTube channel. Now, let's set the stage. Bangladesh, once founded on secular and socialist ideals, has undergone a quiet but profound ideological transformation. During the era when Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus was gaining global recognition for his work, the country was also experiencing a gradual shift towards Islamism. While Yunus himself was not a political figure, his rise coincided with a broader redefinition of national identity, one that saw political parties increasingly align with religious factions for electoral gain. This shift wasn't just symbolic, it influenced education, policy, and public discourse. And it continues to shape Bangladesh's domestic and international posture, which brings us to the present. Today, Bangladesh finds itself navigating tense borders on two fronts. On the India Bangladesh border, we are seeing rising friction, border skirmishes, trade restrictions, and a cooling of defense ties. India is watching closely as Bangladesh appears to be pivoting toward China, raising questions about its long term strategic alignment. On the Myanmar Bangladesh border, the situation is even more precarious. The Arakan army now controls most of the frontier, and cross border violence has intensified. Bangladesh is facing a renewed influx of Rohingya refugees. And with Myanmar's junta losing control, Dhaka has no clear counterpart to negotiate with. What do you think Bangladesh's next move should be? Should it engage with non state actors like the Arakan army or push for international mediation? Let us know your take. We will feature some of your responses in our next episode. To help us unpack these complex dynamics, we are joined by Jayanta Roy Chowdhury, Senior Economic and Foreign Affairs Editor at Eastern India Press Trust of India. He brings decades of experience and a sharp analytical lens to this conversation. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's explore the forces shaping Bangladesh's future and what they mean for the region at large. So, welcome, Dada. Hopefully, you
Well,
are doing
thank you.
fine. So, the first thing that we are going to ask you that you have written extensively on the ideological shifts in Bangladesh. How would you characterize the evolution of political Islam in the country since the 2000s? Because it seems that from 2000, the Islamism has got its edge in Bangladesh. What do you think about it?
There was a move in the early 2000s, or should I say late 90s, when
Mhm.
Bangladesh became a kind of cradle for teaching or training youth in arms and of exporting them to Afghanistan for the struggle there.
Mhm.
Now that those people started returning in the 2000s after the Taliban was defeated by international forces, a much more liberal government was placed in Kabul. So these returnees, they formed various kinds of organizations, or they joined existing organizations like Ansarul Bangla, etc. And they carried out a number of terrorist attacks in Bangladesh as well as in India. The attack on the US consulate in Calcutta, the famous bakery attack, the restaurant attack in Dhaka, all these were carried out by these people. And it created a sense of insecurity within Bangladesh. I was visiting Bangladesh during that period, and there were businessmen who would tell me that we don't want Bangladesh to turn into another Afghanistan. There was this genuine fear that Bangladesh would actually turn into an Afghanistan. And the regime at that point of time, which was led by BNP, seemed complacent about it, and they were not taking any real steps to stop this. They were, in some ways, repeating what the Pakistanis were doing on the western side, which is whenever there was international pressure, they would shut these groups down, at least nominally, so that they can't be seen over ground. But they were not really, their working was not hampered. There were a number of cases. Fatah found out about how Islamic banks were being used to channelize funds from abroad into Bangladesh, which were again being used by these Islamist groups, not only for operations within Bangladesh, but for operations in the larger subcontinent. So this was a danger not only to India and Bangladesh, it was a danger for the entire world. Ultimately, you had elections, you had a period of army rule from 2007 to around 2008 or so. And then ultimately, there was an election where Sheikh Hasina came back with a resounding majority. For the good news for the international community was that she really shut these terrorist groups down totally. There were lots of them who were arrested. There were many who were eliminated in shootouts with the police, with the RAB, with the which has been criticized. But I think those were genuine fights because remember, these are armed fighters and they did not give up without a fight. So there were actual gun battles where many people lost their lives. What happened is when the July-August student revolt happened, many people thought the left and the right actually joined hands in supporting the students movement. The student movement ultimately snowballed into one point agenda that Hasina should leave. Ultimately, Hasina left. So after Sheikh Hasina's departure, we found that instead of leftists or students coming to the fore, it was the Islamist groups, it was the Islamic students' wings which were really coming to the fore. They were the ones who demanded Yunus, Professor Muhammad Yunus, should be brought back and made an interim chief. Remember, Professor Muhammad Yunus had been earlier advocated as the president or the chief of Bangladesh in 2007-8 when the army was
Right.
ruling. A demand which both the major parties, BNP and Awami League, refused or reject. Now, Professor Yunus came to power, and these students, who were many of them were not really students, these Islamist groups came to the fore, and we saw Jamaat-e Islami Bangladesh coming onto the foreground. We also saw groups like Hizbut Tahrir, which was a banned, proscribed group internationally, as well as Ansarul Bangla, again a banned, proscribed group, UN proscribed group. They came to the fore and they were seen in various demonstrations, and these people started coming to the fore. The terrorists who were in jail were all released,
Right.
and none of them were brought back into the jails again by the Yunus government. 10 months have lapsed, and these terrorists have now regrouped. They are not only free, but they have managed to regroup. So the danger is to the world community that these people will, in time, grow in strength and again carry out the mayhem and murder that they were doing in the early 2000s. That is the fear that most governments in the region have.
Right. Yunus is globally celebrating his development model. Yet, domestically, Islamist narratives were gaining ground. So, how do you reconcile these two seemingly contradictory trends?
Well, his model has not really worked. Model of governance has not really worked in Bangladesh, unfortunately. People wanted him to bring some kind of unity, some kind of, should I say, peace and development. None of
Hmm.
these happened. Let's see what happened. Awami Leaguers were all arrested.
Hmm.
Those who have not been arrested are being hounded daily. Minority communities were attacked in the name of attacking supporters of the Awami League, but which was basically a disguised form of, if you can call it racism, you can call it religious, persecution. So not only Hindus, but Christians and Buddhist tribals in the Chittagong Hill tracts.
Hmm.
These people were actually, they had their villages burned, many of them were killed, many of them were persecuted. Systematically, those minority community members who were teachers or academics in universities and schools, they were shunted out of their jobs. They were forced out of their jobs by Islamist groups who virtually forced them out of their jobs. They were attacked, physically attacked, and forced to resign. Vice chancellors, teachers, professors, everybody was forced to resign. Now, this was unfortunately a big, big problem for Bangladesh. The minority community teachers and academics were actually forced out of their offices by students' unions, which owed their allegiance to
Mhm.
Islamic parties. And these people actually beat them up, forced them to resign. Happened to vice chancellors, happened to professors, happened to school teachers. This was a very sad episode in Bangladesh's life, which was not highlighted at all by the international media. Even the Indian
Absolutely.
media, frankly speaking, did not really focus on it as much. It was there in the social media. It happened. Some of those professors who fled Bangladesh have been carrying those tales, but they are in a very sad state. This was not only true for teachers and academics, it was true for lawyers, it was true for journalists, it was true for civil servants. So,
Right.
journalists is another story. The freedom of the press was totally curbed. Independent journalists have been put in jail. 150 journalists are right now in jail on charges as weird and absurd as murder. A journalist who lives in Dhaka, works in Dhaka, has been charged with a murder which happened in Rangpur, which is about 400 kilometers from Dhaka. So these are absurdities. They are really ways of keeping the press under a muzzle. And that is why Bangladeshis are increasingly turning to the social media for the news, which is a very, very sad situation. Economically, 140 factories have closed down shutters. Some of them were
Mhm.
burned down, some of them were forced to stop production because there weren't enough orders, labor strikes, unpaid wages. Orders were cancelled because of the mayhem in Bangladesh and they were diverted to countries like Indonesia, to Cambodia, some of them went to Vietnam. So Bangladesh lost out a lot on their economy. Jobs went, and 87% of the jobs which were lost to women. The women workforce really, really got hurt. Women, as a category of people, were disenfranchised in many ways. There were attempts to give them their rights. Islamist parties have said no way, women will not have whatever any extra rights. In fact, they want to curb those rights. They have gone around in traditional marketplaces and said women should not be allowed to come and shop. It's the men folk who
Mhm.
have to come and shop, or women can come along with the man of their house. They cannot come alone. Women wearing sari, which is the traditional attire of South Asia, specifically of Bengalis, which is the race of Bangladesh, they have been at times humiliated, attacked, forced onto the ground, beaten up, insulted because they were wearing saris and not burqas. Burqa is a dress which has been brought in from the Middle East. Some Orthodox women do wear it, but most Bangladeshis, 99% of Bangladeshi women wear saris, and they do not now dare wear those saris in many areas because of these attacks which have been occurring on them. So this is a slide down into anarchy. People's homes have been looted. Dacoits have been let loose. Those dacoits are being actually being protected by various Islamist parties. And the consequent situation is one where the ordinary Bangladeshi feels that he's insecure, he's unsafe. And Professor Yunus does not any longer enjoy the support that he had in the first few months of the Jono Obutyan, or the kind of revolt. In fact, there are voices which say Sheikh Hasina should come back. She may not or may come back, but the problem is that it is not a vote in her favor; it is a vote against the Yunus government.
Right.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Uh, as you said about the situation of women in Bangladesh, I would just wanted to add that one of the allies of Dr. Yunus, Devopriyo Bhattacharya, just yesterday on his speech on budget, he just said that it is reported by the World Bank that 20% of population has became has gotten beyond the poverty line afresh, and of this 28%, 18% are women who have become poor or who are living under the poverty line afresh, who was not poor during the Hasina era. That is the translation of what he said. Not only that, he claimed that this government did not create any new job because this is a temporary government. So nobody is actually investing in Bangladesh to create jobs. Even during that, in that program, one of the owners of restaurants, he claimed that the business is totally shattered in Bangladesh, especially low scale businessmen. They're suffering dearly. So apart from that, my next question is again coming back to, that what role the mainstream political parties are playing. For example, the leftist political parties, even the central right political parties like Bangladesh Nationalist Party, in legitimizing or resisting the rise of Islamist groups like Jamati Islami or Islami Andolon Bangladesh, Hefazat included. Because you just mentioned that there are some dissenting voices. So, do you think the what kind of role these political parties are playing? Because Awami League is banned, it is not in the scenario. Please.
So what is happening is, of course, the left parties have started realizing their mistake in supporting the students, so-called students movement, and in holding hands with the Jamaati Islami and other Islamist groups. They have now started realizing that they have invited trouble not only for the country but for themselves. But they are yet to make up for that deficiency. They aren't
Mhm.
strong enough on the streets. Right now, they have been pushed into a corner. The people who owe allegiance to these leftist parties, who are authors, journalists, have also been put in jail. So their ranks have been depleted, their strength has been depleted. Even in a thing like the Boi Mala, the book fair, annual book fair that is held in Dhaka, which is a very big literary event, uh, there were raids on
Mhm.
stalls. There were criticism because someone's book was being displayed, which was not bad, but it was apparently not to the liking of Islamist groups. So all these things have happened. So they
Right.
are not in a great position. The Islamist parties, of course, continue to support Yunus, hoping that they will be able to garner greater support. They will be able to fill in the vacuum that has been left behind by the Awami League, which has been banned, which has gone underground virtually. But I do not see that happening.
Mhm.
What I can see is that the loyal 30% base, 25 to 30% base of the Awami League remains intact. And it is certainly not going to go toward the Islamists. BNP is a major gainer. It used to also have about a loyal 25 to 30% base. Plus, it
Mhm.
is a swing vote actually. The remaining voters, about 10%, 8 to 10%, go to various small parties, including the Islamists. And the remaining vote actually shifts between BNP and Awami, and that is how the governments are formed in Bangladesh.
Mhm.
So BNP has been a gainer to that extent. BNP has always distanced itself from the Yunus government, though it has welcomed the coming of the Yunus government, but it has distanced itself. In
Right.
the very beginning itself, the Yunus government wanted that Tariq Rahman should come in as prime minister, and Yunus will be some kind of a president of Bangladesh.
Yeah.
But that formula
Mhm.
was not accepted by the BNP. BNP said, "You form your own government. We are not
Mhm.
joining." So BNP did
Right.
not join the advisory board or the ministry in which Yunus formed.
Mhm.
More recently, when there was a standoff between the army and Yunus government, the army said that we are not going to allow you to take decisions on major policy issues like the Arakan corridor. And
Mhm.
we want elections by December. The
Mhm.
Yunus government wanted political support and it approached the BNP. The
Mhm.
BNP again said, we don't want you to resign,
Right.
but we want some of your ministers to resign. And if you go, then you go. We won't
Right.
stop you. So
Mhm.
that was their attitude, which basically meant that Yunus should go.
Yeah.
Yunus is now even more dependent than ever on the Islamic parties, who are the only ones who are really supporting.
Mhm.
But the Islamist parties have limited support within the masses. And
Mhm.
any movement on their part against the army will not be acceptable to the masses.
Mhm.
They do have caches of arms. I understand that there are caches of arms which are moving around in Bangladesh. Not only were arms looted from various police stations, but arms
Mhm.
were brought in from outside. And those caches of arms are somewhere. They are probably in the control of militant groups, in the control of former terrorists, or rather terrorist groups, as well as in the control of various political parties.
Right.
And that is where the danger now lies for Bangladesh. But Bangladesh's army also has a lot of popular support. So I don't see these groups coming out and trying to fight the army.
Mhm.
That would not only be defeatist for them, they would actually, it would erode whatever little support base they have within the Bangladesh population.
Right. Now, let us discuss that what does it mean for the Indian subcontinent or South Asia in a greatly. But before that, I will want to add that you must have noticed that the judiciary of Bangladesh has been politicized by this government because the judiciary is siding with Islamist groups because recently they have released or acquitted one of the uh, one of the war criminals who committed crimes against humanity and genocide in Bangladesh in 1971, ATM Azharul Islam. So I want the viewers to take notice of this as well, that how this politicization is actually destroying once a liberal country into its core. So I will now again get back to what does it mean for India,
Yeah,
these
before I talk about India, I will take up your point on judiciary.
right,
Actually, judges in the High Court and Supreme Court were forced out of office.
right.
They were actually forced out of office by mobs. There is a mob lynching
Hmm.
fear that people have, and these people were forced out of office. They had to run for their lives. Some of them were in hiding. Some of them have escaped to India and to the West.
Hmm.
And these were replaced by nominees of the Islamist parties.
Right.
And which is why you have judges who are now freeing militants, who are freeing people who have
Mhm.
committed rape, murder, and all kinds of atrocities, and who are continuing to keep in jail journalists.
Yes.
A religious leader from the Hindu community has been put in jail on absurd charges, including all anti-national activities. Whatever kinds of charges could be slapped on him has been slapped on him, and he's in jail for forever and ever. So
Right.
these things are happening mainly because they're representing the Islamist parties, and they are not representing the Bangladeshi nation. The justice
Right.
system in Bangladesh is broken. As far as the overall repercussions of the Indian subcontinent are concerned, the biggest fear is that of the militant groups. The various statements by aides and I should call them ministers, those who are advisors in Yunus's cabinet,
Hmm.
about chicken snake, India's vulnerable chicken snake, which is the Shiliguri corridor, which links mainland India to northeast, about siding with Pakistan in a pincer attack on India, about giving an airport to China. These are more uh, what should I say, hot air than real facts. They won't be able to do it because A, the Bangladesh army is not going to invite trouble for Bangladesh by allowing one of its airfields to be given to another country. It is,
Hmm.
nor is it going to engage in a pincer attack along with Pakistan against India. I doubt these things will happen. But these are intents. So if you let this government continue to Islamize Bangladesh at some stage, that is a danger. But right now, that is
Right.
not really a danger. The danger to the larger global community is that Bangladesh can become a cradle for Islamist terror, just as Afghanistan was at one time, just as certain countries in the Middle East were at some time. So that is the fear you are bringing in a form of Salafist, hardline Islam into Bangladesh. You are converting. You are actually those teachers who were replaced, those teachers who were forced out of office, the teachers who have replaced them are hardcore Islamists. They are teaching new things. You have madrasa students who come out and say, yes, we should kill the infidel. That was never Bangladesh's culture. There was no such thing. Bangladesh's culture is one of syncretic uh, cohabitation, of intermingling of various religions. In fact, the entire Sufi movement in Bangladesh which actually takes the best of Hinduism, the best of Islam, and puts it together. So
Hmm.
that is getting lost in the process. Sufi shrines have been demolished.
Right.
Sufi activists have been killed, threatened, have been thrown into a kind of, you can say, a border area. So this is a danger for Bangladesh, the hardening of its society, the change in its society, and the long-term repercussions that can have for the entire globe. The West has yet to wake up to the danger that these people can pose to them at a later stage. If you do not nip the bud at the right time, that bud is going to become a very, very dangerous flower for the entire world, something like the poppy flower.
One of the reason why anti-Indian sentiment is growing in Bangladesh is the theory of Indian hegemony. right? Particularly, 2 points are being focused. One is the sharing of the joint rivers and the border killing, and they are saying the India's dominant position in doing business in the region. So these three things are actually fueling this hatred, what you said, or anti-Indian sentiment in Bangladesh. What do you have to say about this? That what India should do even to minimize this hatred?
No, there are three things, not two things. The biggest lie which was spread in Bangladesh is that Sheikh Hasina's government gave a lot of benefits to India, including transit from the mainland to the northeast. First of
Mhm.
all, no transit was granted.
Right.
It was in the works, but it was never granted to us, and it doesn't look likely. But people fail to understand that if you build a railway system which links Bangladesh to India,
Mhm.
it gives Bangladeshis access to various Indian markets. A Bangladeshi mill owner can sell his garments in a state like Gujarat or in a state like Kashmir or in a state like Kerala if he has the market access.
Mhm.
But if you sever that link, then Bangladesh loses. Actually, Bangladesh is now a booming economy. It was growing at a very fast rate, and
Mhm.
we were expecting it to come and enter our market in a bigger way.
Right.
Bangladeshi businessmen talk about the Northeast as their market. No, the Bangladesh's bigger market is mainland India.
Mhm.
That has to be realized. They don't seem to understand that. It is a bigger market than USA.
Mhm.
Bangladesh today sells $8 billion worth of ready-made garments to the USA. It is peanuts compared to the size of the ready-made garment in India. If Bangladesh can get only 10% of that market, it will be able to earn more than what it is earning from the US.
Mhm.
That is something which Bangladesh's businessmen and Bangladeshi politicians are not understanding. They are blinkered. This is a vision which was given by Pakistan, and that vision is blinkering them. It is not. Nowhere in the world is trade one way. Nowhere in the world is connectivity one way. It is always a two-way process. Why has European Union developed so far? Think of Europe when it post Second World War. It was in a very poor situation.
Mhm.
Some of its in most parts of Europe, the per capita income was less than the per capita income of Calcutta at that point of time. You have to understand that they were
True.
devastated nations. They rebuilt themselves and they built this beautiful system of railways and roadways connecting every bit of Europe. Rebuilt it, right? Not built, but rebuilt it. And that is why Europe has been trading with each other, and this is why Europe has gone where it has gone. Look at
Mhm.
ASEAN. Where was it? It was poorer than the Indian subcontinent. 30, 25 years back. Where is it now? Where is Bangladesh compared to it? So that is what we should be aiming at. Indian hegemony, the question of Indian hegemony does not arise if India does not have any intent or interest in controlling Bangladesh. Where is the question of hegemony? India does not have any military bases which focus on Bangladesh. As far as border killings are concerned, they are few and far between, but they are made much of. Let me first state that the barbed wire fence that India has constructed is 150 meters within Indian territory. So
Mhm.
if someone goes at 2 o'clock in the night, crosses 150 meters of Indian territory, and then tries to climb the barbed wire fence, and he's armed, he's certainly not some innocent trader.
Mhm.
He is definitely a smuggler or a militant or worse. So, therefore, if the BSF challenges it, BSF is India's border security force, challenges him, and if he shoots back, they have to shoot back in self defense. There are deaths which have occurred. Some of them have been regrettable. The issue of Felani still haunts all of us, you,
Right.
me, everybody in both sides of the border.
Mhm.
That was a very unfortunate issue. But the point is, you have to understand that these are people who first committed an offense by crossing into Indian territory, and then they are now trying to cross a barbed wire fence into deeper Indian territory. They are not. That barbed wire fence is not on the border with Bangladesh. It is well deep inside Indian border. That is not being recognized. These are
So,
not ordinary people, they are smugglers. Trade, border trade has been opened up. Trade is duty free with India. India does not charge duty on most Bangladeshi products. So, therefore, there is no question of this smuggling trade going on. What is smuggled in is liquor. What is smuggled in is drugs like Corex. Corex is actually a prescription drug in India, but unfortunately, in Bangladesh, because it has alcohol content, it is used more as a intoxicant, which is why India has stopped many forex factories near the border. We
Mhm.
have tried to help Bangladesh in that sense. But there are smugglers who bring this in. And obviously, they will cross barbed fences to bring it in. So there are these people, plus, of course, cocaine, drugs, Yama tablets, which come through Burma, which come through the uh, various kinds of border. They actually, the route is from the Golden Triangle, which is Burma, Thailand, Cambodia. These drugs enter through Chittagong into India, into Bangladesh, and then from there to India. This is a danger not only to India but also to Bangladesh. Those drug trafficking. So unless and until we stop these drug traffickers, there is going to be a problem for the entire country. And we all know that drug trafficking is the money which is used by militant or terrorist groups to fund their activities. So if there is a drug trafficker who is trying to cross over from Burma to Bangladesh or from Bangladesh to India, rest assured he is not an innocent. Rest assured that he has links with militants, with criminals, with terrorists, and the money which he is earning is possibly going into militancy, into terrorism, which in the long run will eat into the vitals of both Bangladesh and India. So therefore, it is the duty of the Bangladesh police as well as the Indian police to stop this. Therefore, to cry and shed tears, I feel any life lost is a loss to the entire world. But we have to stop criminalization of the border. We have to stop criminal activities. We have to stop drug trafficking, which is a menace to Bangladesh, which is a menace to India. I know Bangladeshi youth have already been corrupted to a large extent by this import of Yama tablets into Bangladesh via the Chittagong border. This is going to be a major, even bigger problem than it is today. In dark corners of Dhaka, they are being sold. But let me assure you, if we do not stop it now, then there won't be dark corners. It will be sold from ice cream vendors, trolleys, it will be sold from restaurants, it will be sold everywhere. And that is when our countries, both your country and my country, which are actually we united, we bear the same blood in our blood streams. We have the same DNA, we're the same people. We will both be affected by this huge increase in drugs which is happening. Myanmar, the conflict in Myanmar between the regular army and the various militant groups, rebel groups in Myanmar, is also being funded by this drug trafficking. Unfortunately, even the Myanmar army is also benefiting from this drug trafficking, from their jade trafficking, from the way they are selling their rare earth, their minerals. So this is a danger which we have to guard against. And we must do it unitedly instead of crying hoarse that someone has been killed. We should try and recognize who are those who have been killed, and we should try and stop it at where it started.
Yes, I will just differ on this point of, I mean, you already said that this is unfortunate killing of people in the border. However, there are, standard procedure for border guards to operate, and which definitely includes not to kill people and how to actually operate with these traffickers, because this is not only modern day phenomena, this is a historical phenomena that there were always the time, there were marauders, there were these people who were just trafficking human to product, to drug, arms, and everything. We have come to the very close of this program, but before leaving, because we will again talk with you, we'll have again conversation with you in another episode. But for today, I will ask you the last question: that do you think, or how long do you think Dr. Yunus can actually fend off these terrorists from taking over his government?
I don't think he's not managed to do it. I think he's losing this battle. And I think
Mhm.
either they will ultimately use him and take over the government, or the army and other forces like the BNP will see to an end to his government and bring law and order back to Bangladesh, which Bangladeshis deserve, frankly speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of this episode of South Asia in Flux. A huge thank you to our guest, Jayanta Roy Chowdhury, for sharing his deep insights into the ideological and strategic shifts shaping Bangladesh today. From the rise of political Islam to the evolving dynamics along the India and Myanmar border, it's clear that Bangladesh stands at a critical crossroads, one where domestic identity, regional diplomacy, and global alignments are all in flux. We want to hear from you what stood out to you in today's discussion. Do you think Bangladesh's foreign policy is being reshaped more by ideology or by strategic necessity? Join the conversation using South Asia in Flux or leave us a comment on YouTube. If you found this episode insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep questioning the forces that shape our world. Thanks for listening.